I'm Jackie Barry, author of Experiential Speaking, the new book of icebreakers and energizers for speakers and trainers. And I'm here today with David Gouthro, who is in Vancouver, Canada, at 9 o'clock in the morning, where it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon here in the UK. Hello, David.
Hello, Jackie. This is great to see you. It's been a long time.
It was lovely to meet you at the CAPS convention a year or more ago. And we had a great conversation then about audience participation, which led to you very kindly writing a foreword for the book.
Which was my pleasure. And that's, I actually don't like writing, and that's probably the longest piece I've written in about the last 10 years. So, but it was my pleasure to do so.
Oh, well, thank you. I was thrilled. But what I know about you is that as a speaker, you do keynote talks and you do MC and you facilitate meetings. And I know that you and I both are very keen on engaging the audience so they get involved rather than just sitting and listening. So tell us more.
Well, I mean, and I've been kind of ranting about this for quite a while in conferences, that I think it's abusive to have one person at the front speak and 300 or 400 or 500 people in the audience just going away with one person's perspective on something. And the likelihood of that having impact in their organization is very, very low. So, you know, whether it's a keynote or facilitation, which is most of what I do, or even emceeing, there's a way to engage the audience so that they actually are engaging not just with me and with each other, but with the content. And mostly around how they might use that when they get back to their office to make a difference, which presumably is why people are paying them to be in a room.
That is what you'd hope, isn't it? But it actually makes a difference rather than just sit and enjoy it while they listen.
That's right. Like, I think, you know, there are some people that seem to be more focused on making an income than having an impact. And I think anytime you're in front of a group, you should be thinking about how to have an impact on them, not simply how to have an impact on your wallet.
So tell us about some of the tools that you use, because I know you've got lots of props and techniques and exercises that help you to get your message across in a way that that audience member is going to take on board and then react to.
Okay, so I use a lot of card sets, and I'll just show you a couple that I use and how I use them. So, and it's always in the context of whatever the content of the meeting is about. So, for example, if it's about leadership, there's a set of cards from a fellow by the name of Frank Kick, but he's got they've got all kinds of different images on them. I can't tell if they're upside down or not, but I will spread these. There's like literally 200 of them that I'll spread around the room. And I'll have people wander around, and again, depending on the context, I'll ask them to pick up 2 cards that are metaphors for what they believe either are their leadership qualities or leadership qualities that are required by their organization. So 2 cards maybe that represent their strengths, and 1 that's a developmental opportunity. So I'll just take 3 at random here. So this one I might hold up and say that you know, it's important to grow people, right? And this is something that's got strong roots. If it didn't have strong roots, it wouldn't grow to that size. But also you have to be willing to stand alone. So this is the middle of the field. So that might be what one person says. This one might be, and this is a forest, so the importance of being able to see the trees in the forest. So we're surrounded by all this information, and we need to be able to recognize that at a large level and get closer. And maybe one of the developmental opportunities is these 2 dolphins that I tend to do things on my own. I'm making all this up, by the way, but I tend to do things on my own, and I really need to work more effectively with other people, with my colleagues, and collaborate. So, you know, I'll have people, depends on the size of the group, that might be in small groups, then have them describe to each other the cards or wander around the room so they're physically moving. And if it's a group of like 50 or 60 people, do the same sort of exercise. And it gets people into the content, but also gets them moving and gets them meeting with other folks. Okay? So I'll do that when, I'll use those cards. I take them with me everywhere I go, because there's always a way that that I can use it. And for something like, let's say the context is innovation or creativity. And part of it is seeing things in different ways and connecting different things. So again, one person might have one card like this that looks like a diamond. Another one might have something like this that's a compass. So what's the relationship between those two? How can I force a connection, which is, often done in the context of creativity? So, we need to point the way to find the diamonds in our organization or something like that. So obviously, and others has to be a penalty-free conversation, or they can go at that. But that's one that I use. There's an organization called Best Self, and I love these as icebreakers. Sometimes without me even talking about it, I'll leave them on the table when people come in. So when they're waiting for things to get started, there's these cards they can flip over. And these are in different categories, but one card might be, who's someone that you really admire? And I'd have to say Jackie Berry, of course. That would be my starting point. Or what's one thing you did that you wish you could go back and undo? So people could choose a card, and sometimes it's where it's I direct it. Other times, just they do it randomly to get people talking. But this company, it was I think a Kickstarter campaign, Best Self. They have ones on creativity, on decision making, a couple of others. So anything that gets people out of the normal way of having a conversation to enter into. It doesn't have to be a game, but it could be game-like. You can set it up to meet as many people as you wish. So I'll do things like that. Some of the standards that I'm sure that you've probably seen are it's sometimes called Two Truths and a Lie, sometimes called, Find the Fact, where people write down 4 facts about themselves, 3 that are true that no one else is likely to know, and then a false one that's false but not obviously so. And work at a small table where people create those cards, they pass them on to another table, and then the objective is to figure out which card belongs to whom and which is the false one. So there's lots of activities like that. This was another Kickstarter campaign. If you were to see my office, I have so much stuff that I think at some point I might be able to use that and never do, which of course drives my wife absolutely batty because it's keeping me from retiring until I'm 95. But this is something called We See.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this very clever fellow, who interestingly enough, I found out went to the same university that I did, but obviously he paid much closer attention to how to make money than I did. He's got these sets of cards, and he's got a whole pile of great exercises in it. But one of the things that he has people do is, if you have, let's say everyone's got one of these cards, and what they need to do is get together with someone else that shares a similar characteristic with them. So it might be a color, a number, an image. As I'm looking through these, I realize you can't see them at all, but I'll give you an example. So the thing that these cards, okay, so what's the thing that these cards have in common?
A round shape in the middle.
Okay, great, right? So they could go, that's round shape. It could be that they have some sort of corona around them. They could zero in on anything, but what's obvious, it's kind of round and there's just one thing. So I'll use those to get people into conversations where you want them to mix and match, but you don't want to get it overly engineered. So say, get together with this group of 3. So the first question to explore is, what do you hope to get out of this meeting today? Right? Then they have to find some other cards, and maybe, what are you going to do to make sure that you get what you want out of this meeting today? So you have all these conversations with random people that are relevant to the content of whatever it is that you're doing in that day. And you could do this with a group of 10 people or 50 people or 100 people, right? If you have enough cards. So I've been blathering on. Those are those are some things. I'll wait for the next question before I dive in again.
Well, thank you very much for preparing all those props and cards to show us. I do remember that you have an activity with a standard deck of cards where you ask people to form groups or ask questions based on the number they've got on their card or the suit. And I used that same technique with a group. The only downside was when I gathered all the cards up at the end of the day, someone had stolen the Queen of Hearts. I ended up with a 51 card deck. But anyway.
It's a great metaphor for that. And of course, there's different sizes of cards. So you can get like a regular card size deck, or you can get large ones. And another way, I don't know if I talked about this, this is actually a sort of a game that Tiagi introduced me to.
Well, this was my next question, actually, before you tell us about that game, which was how did you discover experiential learning in the first place, and why is this so important, do you think?
Well, let me go back to the year 1980, and there's an organization at the time, it was called NSPI, National Society for Performance Improvement. It's now ISPI, International Society for Performance Improvement. And I took a pre-conference workshop with two wonderful individuals from Bloomington, Indiana. One was a gentleman by the name of Siddhasailam Tyagarajan, and the other was Diane Dormant, and they were friends that had worked together. And the whole session was on using activities. At the time, I was working for a training and development company, Wilson Learning Corporation. I was working in the Toronto office of the Minneapolis-based organization. And I just loved the activity and looking for other ways to present content other than what's in the leader's guide. So I joined ISBI and became good friends with Tiagi. He's been a mentor of mine for whatever the year is now, minus 1980, like 30 or 40 years or something like that. And I saw the value in it and how much fun it was. And I think being playful is really important for me to be able to do my best work. So I've just, been hooked on Tiagi, on his games that he designs that are frame games that you can plug any content into. I've been to, there's an organization called NASIGA, North American Simulation and Gaming Association. And their whole thing is, developing games for learning and organizational change. So I went to those for a couple of years. So I was on their board for a while. I've invited Tiagi up here to do workshops for some of my colleagues and my not yet clients. So just got hooked many, many years ago and just find it's a really good way to get content across, to keep me awake, keep the audience awake, keep the content relevant, and increase the likelihood to do something with it.
Now, what is that game then that you were just about to refer to before I interrupted that you say you got from Tiagi?
Yeah, it was using playing cards again, and I give everyone a card, and they were asked to not look at the card, and then have basically like a cocktail conversation where they're wandering around the room, treating other people according to the status given them by their card, but without giving it away. So if someone had a king, I wouldn't say, so can I polish your crown? But how would I treat someone that had status given to them by the card? And I usually start out saying that aces are low and let people kind of have all their conversations that they would. People know how to do this, right? They get status. And then partway through, I say, I made a horrible mistake. Aces are actually high. And you see how quickly the conversations change. And so after people have done that for maybe 7 to 10 minutes, I ask them then to line up according to what they feel their status was based on how they were treated. And usually, like the high cards and low cards, very accurate. In the middle, they're all kind of close. But to make the point, and this is usually when I've been doing it in the context of emotional intelligence, that we know how we feel treated, and we know how we treat other people, and sort of, talking about this is not something that's totally new, that if you pay attention, that you can actually get a sense of status. It's just kind of a lead in to give credibility to the concept of emotional intelligence.
I love that. And I do love, through the world of improv that I've been playing with for the last 5 or 6 years, status games and how useful they are, because it all relates to real life. And I suppose the importance of this is that it has to have a context and it has to have a point. So let's talk first about the importance of playfulness and fun. Why do you think that really makes such a difference to people's ability to take on new information and your learning points?
That's actually, a very big question. And so let me just give a couple of random responses. So one is that, in the animal kingdom, people acquire skills through play, like animals wrestling with each other and stuff like that, learn the skills that they need for hunting and stuff like that. It's something that's very natural to us. When we're young kids, we learn through play. I think in play, if it's play as opposed to in a game, there tends to be no ego, right? It's all about the play. It's very much in the moment. A friend of mine who's a play therapist wrote a book called Playing by Heart, based on some of his experience with working with wolves and dolphins and coyotes in the wild, and said that play is the sincerest form of love, because there's no expectation. You enter freely, you exit freely. So I think it's something that's natural and innate to us that quite often we suppress when we get into business. And once people taste it and touch it, it just totally changes the tone in the room. And, the sense of connection that's built through play is huge. And, that especially if you're talking about creativity and innovation and things like that, I've never found any book that makes the case that you'll get more ideas by being more serious about getting ideas. It's a very important part of that. And, you talk about improv. And I think improv is probably one of the best skills to build that into your DNA when it comes to change management and leadership, because it totally keeps you in the moment. There's no judgment. It's inherently playful, and it gives people a chance to let loose. When I've done improv, usually I don't call it improv, because people go, I can't do improv, I'm not creative, all that sort of stuff. So I don't even use that term. But let's get into some activities, some ways of engaging more fully with the content, or something like that. And once they're doing that and engaged in it, it is hard to shut them off. We've brought some improv facilitators in for evening sessions with some boards that I've been working with. And initially it's, and by the end, they just want to go out and keep doing it and drink together. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. So I think it's natural. I think it loosens people up, especially around creativity. And it builds connections without being obvious that that's what you're trying to do.
I've become a huge improv addict over the last few years, and it's made me a better speaker and trainer, but it's also made me a better human and just having a better experience of life. So like you though, when I use it in a training session, I generally don't label it improv.
And I mean, I've got probably a whole bookshelf of improv activities, and you may be familiar with the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina. They have all kinds of leadership instruments. They actually have a set of cards for improv in business.
How do you deal with resistance if you get that from an audience member? Because it is sometimes a shift for them out of that kind of corporate mindset into a more playful one.
Well, there's a bunch of different ways. So sometimes I just, let them choose to come in or not. So, challenge by choice used to be one of the things that when you were doing Outward Bound programs, when I was an employee of Apple. But I think it's like if you have to play, you can't play, right? That's an inherent conflict. So give people an opportunity, give them to exercise the choice, because otherwise they're fighting with me and their ego rather than with the game. Quite often people want a reason or a rationale for doing it. So here's why we do this. Yeah. And even the most stiff people, if they see that it's going to be some value to them or to the organization, they'll engage. And if they're a little hesitant at first, I'm totally okay with that, right? And part of it, you say it makes you a better speaker, it makes you a better facilitator if you improv as well, because whatever happens out there, someone doesn't want to play, the whole group rebels. It's like, okay, let's embrace that and work with that. Sure. So I think giving them context, giving them rationale, and giving them choice are three things.
Very key. And one of the things I suspect you do, but I don't know till I ask you, is do you make yourself potentially the silliest person in the room? So it helps take that embarrassment away from them. You're giving them permission, because what I'm thinking, for example, is I know a photo of you on social media with a silly hat.
No, I wouldn't say I make myself the silliest person, but I would try to model what I want from them. So I'm quite comfortable making mistakes and asking stupid questions and things like that. And how I handle my own mistakes kind of sets the environment for them to do that. So I think if you're not, it's hard to get other people to be playful if you're not yourself. It's like it's good for them, but not for me because I'm the serious facilitator, keynote speaker, things like that. So I think the most important part is to be authentic, right? Whatever that is. And if I am an incredibly serious person, to say, to declare that, say, this stuff, I don't like doing this kind of thing myself, but I found it very valuable. So, let's just give it a try and you decide for yourself it's of value. So, I think you can gauge people if you do it from a point that's authentic. Because if you just do it because you saw it on a list somewhere, you're going to try this, people sense your discomfort and it's tougher for them to engage then.
Yes, authenticity, of course, is absolutely key, and you have to be in the right place yourself to be able to take them along with you. So now tell me about the hat.
Well, that hat, I can't remember why I got it initially. Well, it's one of those things that I got, I thought, oh, I'll be able to use this somehow. So I actually use it as a metaphor. It's one I think that has all the eyeballs
Yes.
in the end. And so part of it could be used as a leader. You have to keep your eye on a lot of different things. As a facilitator, you have to keep your eye on a lot of different things. And so for something like that, so I use it more as a metaphor than just the fact that it's a silly hat that, here's why. And I'll have to find out where that is actually online and to see if it's actually supporting my image of being a very serious, effective consultant.
And how do you find people respond? I'm guessing that you get some laughter.
Well, if I explain it, like if I were to come, and it depends on when you do it in a meeting as well. So one of the things that I often do sessions on why how facilitation and keynote speaking are different. So if you're a keynote speaker and if you mess up at the beginning, people can be mad at you for the full hour. Whereas if you're facilitating something or training and you have a half day or a day, you can recover from a mistake. So I would, unless it was something that was really critical to the point I was trying to make, would I come onto stage at the beginning of a keynote wearing that. Once people start to sense my authenticity and then really care about them, it kind of gives me permission to do things like that. So I might bring it up partway through the day or come back after break, but be able to not pretend it's not there, but to build it into what I'm saying. So you may be wondering why I'm wearing this hat or why I'm wearing this nose flute or things like that. So I think it's all got to be purposeful, whatever you're doing.
I have to ask you now, then, why are you wearing the nose flute?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Jackie, because so the story very, very, so I use it as a metaphor that I can just get people to agree with the statement that they'll grow their company faster if they're willing to make mistakes. And people say, yeah. But if there's a hierarchy in the room, they typically will not demonstrate that. They'll play it safe. So I'll change the phrase slightly to that you'll grow your company faster if you're willing to blow it. Now, if you happen to work for a gas utility, that phrase, totally different meaning. So, I wouldn't use it in that context. But then introduce them to the nose flute and say that the nose flute is a great metaphor because, like life, you only get better at it if you're willing to blow it. And so the three conditions to be able to play the nose flute, you first of all have to let go of any need to look good. Secondly, you have to be able to breathe out through your nose, which most people can do. And the third is to open your mouth at the same time as you're breathing through your nose. So then I'll give one, I'll demonstrate it, but then give them to folks, depending upon the size of the group, and get them to try it. And make the point that their resistance to trying something new is the same resistance to coming up with what might be an out-of-the-box idea that might in the past have been judged, but actually is needed to move forward. Right. And so, because people say, well, it won't work with a nose like mine, or I'll try it when I get home, or I'll play it in the car, or I'll give it to my kids. It's like, no, like really, this is serious. Try it and see what happens. So, usually people will flits around. They'll eventually get it, like, and then can make the observation that in some cases you say, did it good enough? But if you're willing to experiment, you might find that you can change the tone. So, or even to play tunes. Let's see. I'm trying to be culturally sensitive, or
Thank you.
no, that's wrong one. And so on and so forth. But I also use it as an example of that, the importance of saying why not rather than why. Because sometimes to do anything that we're not quite sure of, we have to have a reason or a rationale for it. And what the nose flute led me to, I had a colleague working with me a number of years ago who was doing a new media program. She had to do a website. So I said, okay, let's make up an organization. How about the Vancouver Nose Flute Ensemble, which does not exist. So she did a website, a few demo videos. We thought nothing of it, just kind of practice for her. I have no idea what mark she got. A few years later, I got a call from a Swedish sounding gentleman who said, I'm with a marketing firm in Stockholm, and we are preparing a pitch or a proposal to a pharmaceutical company to help them launch a new nasal spray. You know, we were wondering if the Vancouver Nose Flute Ensemble, which doesn't exist, would like to work with us on this. So thinking it was a joke, I said, sure. A few weeks later, I got a call back and said, they liked the idea, we got the engagement, we'd like to bring you over and show the nose flute to the Swedish firm's management team. So I flew over to Europe and did a little demonstration of the nose flute. And the Swedes, I found huge generalization, not particularly effusive. So I showed them the nose flute and they kind of went, which meant they loved it. So the product idea was to have the Vancouver Nose Flute Ensemble, which doesn't exist, help to launch the Swedish Nose Flute Orchestra, sponsored by the pharmaceutical company launching a new nasal spray, which is actually brilliant because you can't play the nose flute if you're congested. So thought nothing of it. They got over-the-counter approval for the drug. In the summertime, families on vacation get this call. We'd like to send a crew over to videotape the Vancouver Nose Flute Ensemble. Right now I'm starting to go, uh-oh, no such thing, playing the nose flute. I can come to Sweden, save you a lot of money. No, we want Vancouver as the background. So 6 people landed on our doorstep, and then for the next day drove all around Vancouver playing nose flutes in places I would never do it, like driving in traffic, driving a standard car, van in front that has the cameraman in the back with a tail gunner and a bomber, and say, get closer, playing these songs, rush hour traffic, 4 lanes merge into one. It was death-defying. Anyhow, they ended up running 3 commercials on national TV for 6 weeks in Stockholm. Said, you know, I said, if I can do anything else I can do to help, give me a call. So we don't think we can afford you. I said, listen, if I can involve my wife and daughter, we can work it out. So they said, official launch is going to be in the fall. They sent me a business class ticket, 2 economy class tickets. Yes, my wife thoroughly enjoyed the business class seat on the way over. And, you know, we fly into Heathrow, into Stockholm. Everyone's dead tired. Come out in the middle of the Stockholm airport. 5 members of the Swedish Nose Flute Orchestra, bright yellow uniforms on. Music stands in front of them playing "O Canada" on nose flute. That was unbelievable. And at that time, there were over 50,000 members of the Swedish Nose Flute Orchestra.
Wow.
Because at the end of each clip, I had to say, snore.nu, it's for you. And the website was snor.nu for Swedish Nose Flute Orchestra, where they go to the website, be introduced to the Swedish Nose Flute Orchestra, send in equivalent of a couple of bucks, and be sent a nose flute with the product name on it. So you could never design something like that to happen. But I use it as an example of just saying, well, why not? It'll be fun. And what difference it would make in their company and their organization if they were to say, why not, a little more often, or at least in balance with why. Why should we?
And that's a fantastic example of your storytelling, which is one of your benefits on stage or in a training session or a workshop or a seminar for your clients. But it leads to the next question, which is, at a time when parts of the world are getting really nervous about traveling. When you're the kind of speaker like you and I that has a lot of audience interaction and a lot of physical props and maybe running about, what are the likes of us going to do to deliver that same kind of immersive experience for people if we have to do it virtually via a video call rather than in person?
Sure. So first of all, let me mention a resource to you on Tiagi's website, which is www.tiagi.com. He came up and did a workshop here in Vancouver on something called LOLA, which stands for Live Online Learning Activities. So how can you take the kind of activities that you normally do face-to-face and do them online and in webinars, things like that. So that's a great resource. But I'll give you a couple of examples. I use Zoom a lot. I don't use the webinar platform, although I could, but just use the meetings. And when you can get people to have conversations, you can put them into Zoom rooms where they can have a conversation. You can set, because it's a small group conversations that you often miss when you're online, that you can do in a classroom. So to put people into breakout rooms to have a conversation where you can kind of duck in and duck out and have them report out. So that's one way to do it. Another way is to do online polls and things like that. So the activity, it's not the same as doing it face to face, but you could use the same content. So people are actually engaging with you. I find sitting and just listening to someone speak, like there's always something that can distract me. So how do you keep people engaged? And part of it is, I think, when it's done remotely, in doing your design, to really be asking not just what the content is, but how can I engage people in something, a different kind of activity every few minutes. So using chat boxes, things like that. I think it's not. I much prefer face to face. But if you can do it online, there's tools that let you do that. There's another tool that I've just recently started using called Thought Exchange, and it's a company. It's actually based in BC, where done in combination with a webinar. They'll do things like they'll present some content on the webinar and then do an exchange, thought exchange. So the question might be posed: what are some of the features of this product that you think would have the greatest value to your clients? And people can start plunking these in, either using their phone or on the computer, and then rank them. So on the spot. So what surface to the top are the ones that the group themselves said are the most relevant? Really hard for you when you're presenting to know what's going to be of most importance to someone. So using a combination of tools like Zoom and like Thought Exchange is another way to do it. If you can, to engage people earlier through a survey instrument of some sort. A lot of people use SurveyMonkey. In Canada, some of our government clients and universities aren't able to use a survey tool where the data is stored in the United States, because the United States can, well, I won't go there. So I use something called Question Pro that's based in Canada. It's got servers all over the world, but I could use one specifically in Canada. So things like that. But the other thing is, if you know you're going to be doing something with a group, is to actually send out a questionnaire to them in advance. Say, so normally we'd be doing this in person. What are some of your ideas and how we can keep people engaged in this session, so they actually start to own the process before you even talk to them? Now that's pretty massive
anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty massive customization, but it really says that this is about you. It's not just about me and my content.
Sure. Well, you've obviously been immersed in this world of experiential learning for decades, and you've got all these tools at your fingertips. And thank you for sharing so many of them during this conversation. What main tip would you give to another speaker or trainer or MC who was considering introducing more audience interaction into their talks?
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all is have an improviser's mindset in going into it. Start small, right? And really think through from a design standpoint why you're doing the activity. right? Just because it's kind of like, you say if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, you know, you certainly don't want to be using one particular activity all the time because it's your favorite and it's the one that you have. So, you know, think backwards from what the impact is or what the outcome is that you're looking for, and then use the activity to get that. I think it's great to practice with other people. And like I get together with some of my colleagues on Zoom. Sometimes we have what we call Wine and Wisdom Wednesdays. So with a glass of wine, you know, sit around, what if, here's an activity, what are some different ways we could do it? So talk through it with some other folks. You know, get together a group of friends that are like-minded, want to try some of these things and have like a lab where you try them out. But I think definitely testing it yourself before blessing someone else with your newfound techniques is a really good idea. But yeah, I think it's, you know, try it. Try something small. Like you've got so many great activities in your book. Like there were so many that I'd never seen before. And pick one, you know, and try it. Or check with, if you have a good relationship with your client, say, this is what I'd like to do. Could we do an experiment? And, you know, and try this. And, you know, you may have to say, and if it doesn't work, I'll discount my fee by 5% or something like that to mitigate the risk. But those are a few things that come to mind.
Well, I really appreciate all those ideas. Thank you. Where can people go if they want to find out more about you and what you do?
Well, I live here in West Vancouver. They're welcome to come and visit. But my website is www.davidgouthro, so DAVIDGOUTHRO.com. Or just email me. I'm happy to chat, and that's just david@davidgouthro.com. And I'm happy to have a Zoom call, or, you know, if I have the time. I love these kinds of conversations much more than doing things where I make money at it. So this is what juices me up and nourishes me. So anytime.
I know we could probably talk for hours because we're both equally enthusiastic about this way of communicating and getting a message across. But thank you very much.
Totally my pleasure, Jackie. Thanks for asking me, and I hope your book is outrageously successful, that you have amazing round the world tour sharing your gifts.
Thank you.